The day started the same as ever, the sun rising over the horizon, a hot cup of coffee seeping into my palm. I was glancing over the paper in a relaxed kind of way when I noticed a bright orange poster plastered on my front door, the equivalent of a warning sticker on a box of dynamite. In angry, bold letters, it yelled, "Notice of removal. Your unwanted crops need to be removed within 14 days or legal consequences will ensue." I stood there frozen, staring at the words, sure that I had misread them, but there they were, in black and white. A shocked, incredulous laugh exploded out of me. Anyone who believed they could command me, a farmer on legally rented federal land, to destroy my crops obviously hadn't done their research. The humor dissipated quickly, replaced with a seething anger. Someone had gone out of their way to start a fight they didn't even know how to end. By noon, the community was humming louder than a cloud of cicadas. It spread fast that the HOA president, a woman named Deborah, had called my cornfields an eyesore. Deborah, with her piercing voice and endless need for control, was sure the view of my fields behind her precious suburban houses was bringing down property value. From my porch, I observed her stride along the boundary of my property, clipboard held high, two board members following in tow like obedient henchmen. She sported a huge sun hat and big sunglasses that shouted self-absorption, flailing about at my crops and haranguing loudly enough for me to hear every ridiculous word. She referred to my fields as a neglected wasteland and declared them a threat to the aesthetic of the community. She even threatened kids would get lost in the corn, as if my fields were some vast, magical maze. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. That was enough. I set my coffee aside and walked in her direction. The instant Deborah saw me, she straightened, gripping her clipboard like armor. Her underlings moved away from her, looking at me as if I might draw a six-shooter. "Afternoon," I said, remaining calm. Deborah went right into a speech on HOA landscaping regulation, demanding my fields, which are visible from their oh-so-dear roads, were under her jurisdiction. As calmly as possible, I inquired how her regulations could possibly extend to agricultural land rented by the federal government for over 7 decades. She didn't even flinch, stating with unwavering certainty that her HOA's jurisdiction took precedence over all else. That's when I realized reason wasn't going to cut it. This wasn't logical. It was about control. I smiled, the kind of smile you give a person who just said they're going to wrestle a bear. I told her that my property was covered under a federal agricultural preservation and veteran assistance program. If she so much as touched one stalk, she'd have repercussions she couldn't even dream of. Her eyes narrowed, but I could see she believed I was bluffing. That night, a notice slipped under my door, an invitation to an emergency HOA meeting to vote on the removal of my crops. I glared at the paper, amazed at their temerity. My farm was half a mile beyond their neighborhood's official limits, but they behaved like feudal lords staking out new territory. That evening, I sat on my porch, observing the cornfields burn gold in the sun's descent. This wasn't dirt. This was history. My father had worked it, his father before him. Now it was a site where veterans could recover from war through farming. Deborah had no idea what she had awakened. I sipped my coffee and silently promised myself, if she was willing to start a war, I'd engage, quiet, lawful, and annihilating. The following evening, heavy humidity hugged the air as I rattled my ancient truck into the community clubhouse parking area amidst a sea of gleaming SUVs. Residents gave me curious, apprehensive, even hostile stares as I doffed my hat and went inside. The room was filled, folding chairs all facing a table where Deborah and her board presided like judges at a kangaroo court. Wearing a neat white blazer, Deborah pounded her gavel with the grandeur of a dictator, declaring that we had assembled to discuss the violation represented by my farmland. She revealed a poster board covered in pictures of my fields, ringed in indignant red marker, like evidence at a crime scene. Next came the obligatory drivel, discussion of obstructed views, vermin, and declining home prices, presented with dramatic flair. When she opened the discussion to questions, some residents hesitantly questioned her jurisdiction over land beyond the neighborhood. Deborah brushed them off, asserting that visual impact entitled her. I spotted my moment. Seeing them off, I asserted, for the record, this property is rented by the Department of Agriculture under a federal preservation program. It's protected. Your HOA does not apply. You're harassing me and violating federal property rights. There was silence in the room. Deborah's lip curled, but she was able to paste on a fake smile, inviting us to come to a neighborly agreement. I smiled back. Fine, you stay off my land, or you're going to have to answer to the feds. Her face grew darker. She threatened to pull out the crops herself and charge me. I shrugged, promising to document every step for the Department of Agriculture and the sheriff. Deborah slammed her gavel, shutting down the meeting before it could spin further out of her control. In the following days, things spiraled. Deborah penned a certified letter with a final warning. I framed it. I called my contact at the Department of Agriculture, a no-nonsense woman named Clara, and she laughed so hard she nearly dropped the phone. She promised to send an inspector within days and indicated criminal trespassing charges could be on the horizon if Deborah acted. That evening, my motion cameras captured Deborah's accomplices sneaking along my fence line with survey equipment, staking out non-existent lines. Afterwards, the video captured Deborah herself, sneaking onto my property at night, planting orange markers and spray painting stakes. It was pure gold. I sent the evidence to Clara and the sheriff with a note of courtesy, evidence of illicit activity on federal property. Your advice is requested. The next morning, a landscaping crew came crashing in, weed whackers and chainsaws screaming, with Deborah at the helm like a general. I was on my porch having coffee and grinned. I waited 2 minutes before calling the sheriff. When the initial blade hit a cornstalk, I called. The sheriff pulled up to a half-dozen neighbors, rubbernecking. A granite-jawed giant of a man, he listened in silence as Deborah yelled on about aesthetics before summarily detaining her for questioning. The workers dropped their equipment and ran. I turned over my tape and the federal lease. The sheriff nodded, assuring me action would be swift. As Deborah was taken away, I doffed my hat. The actual penalties were only getting started. Deborah quieted for a while, but I figured she wasn't finished. Clara cautioned me that federal procedures were slow, but I was patient. An evening came when my motion detectors beeped once more. A new grounds crew, contracted from 2 counties away, came through, heavy lawnmowers in tow. Deborah yelled commands, utterly unaware of the confusion among the workers. I called Clara. "Stay where you are," she said. "Agents are coming." I documented everything. As the first blade hit my crops, government SUVs roared onto the scene, lights blazing. Department of Agriculture agents descended in droves, supported by deputies. Deborah charged at them, waving her clipboard and yelling about her rights. A steely-eyed agent allowed her to vent before reading the charges in a calm voice. Trespassing, damage to federal property, and interference with a federal program. The fines could reach into the stratosphere, and jail time was now a distinct possibility. Deborah's face contorted, her world crumbling around her. She blamed everyone but herself, but the agents had it all. Footage, documents, witnesses. They warned her. Any further interference would mean immediate arrest. The landscaping crew fled. Later, Clara confirmed, the government would not only repair the damage, but they were also going after Deborah personally, not the HOA. 2 nights later, footsteps on the gravel woke me. I took a flashlight, switched on the spotlight, and spotted 3 kids just standing there, each with gasoline and matches. My yell startled them. They let go of their stuff and confessed right off. Deborah had hired them to burn up the fields for cash to cover whatever they got into. The sheriff handcuffed them, shaking his head. This was no more petty vandalism, but a crime. Deborah had gone past a boundary that she could never turn back from. By the time morning arrived, the town exploded. Everybody knew the truth, that Deborah had planned on vandalism and attempted arson. The sheriff verified the charges, felony endangerment and conspiracy. Her former HOA co-conspirators turned against her in an instant, claiming innocence. Clara's team installed a field office right in the community center, their black SUVs a painful reminder of who was really in charge now. Residents who previously supported Deborah flipped sides quickly. They held functions for farmland conservation. They contributed to the Veterans Program. Deborah attempted one last desperate bid, hiring a slick city attorney, bringing absurd counterclaims against me for entrapment and defamation. Clara's office buried them. The judge dismissed her case out of hand. Her attorney quit. Foreclosure notices soon dotted her luxurious residence. Her SUV was repossessed. Her reputation lost. Deborah was shunned. In the end, she moved away and cleaned up, attempting to rid herself of her destroyed reputation. But life on the farm recovered. The fields recovered, with grants and donations coming in to support them. The Veterans Program grew, a new greenhouse and education center, attracting more veterans and families than ever before. Festivals rang out with laughter, children playing where Deborah had plotted. At the gate of the farm, there was a new sign. This land is guarded by community strength and silent resistance. During quiet moments, I thought about the struggle. The land was not merely crops, it was resilience, history, community. A child's sketch of me, standing tall in the fields like a hero, summed it up beautifully. Deborah believed she could command something greater than herself. She fell short. The crops prospered. The community thrived. The roots here were stronger than her pride. As the sun fell over the golden corn, I knew we had prevailed, not by anger, but by truth, by patience, and by the unbreakable will of those who stand.